Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. We're kicking off TESS 2025 with our webinar series before the main event on November 11th and 12th at the Key, located in Toronto. We have 3 different webinars lined up for you today. You can use the same link for 12 p.m. today to join us with Anne-Marie Spott, who will be speaking on rediscovering open education, as well as 2 p.m. today for reflections on Brock University on the institutional ethical framework. So we want to acknowledge that the land we're meeting on across Ontario, the eCampus Ontario offices are located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that the land is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So our first presentation is going to be from Dani Dilkes, as well as Cortney Hanna-Benson, Cultivating Generative AI Pedagogical Reflection through the Generative AI Challenge and Multidisciplinary Knowledge Building. So I'll let them take it over.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. As you heard, our presentation title is a little bit of a mouthful, but we're here to share a project that we've been working on through Western Center for Teaching and Learning called the Generative AI Challenge, specifically talking about how we were able to cultivate generative AI pedagogical reflection through the challenge and create spaces for multidisciplinary knowledge building. My name is Dani Dilkes. I'm an educational developer with the center, and I'll let Courtney introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cortney Hanna-Benson, the Associate Director for Digital Learning at our Center for Teaching and Learning.
And we wouldn't be true educational developers if we didn't start by making our audience do some of the heavy cognitive lifting. So we're going to ask folks to, in the chat, respond to a question. And our question is, what challenges have you encountered in your institutions, in your own work, navigating generative AI conversations? And I'll also paste our question into the chat, but we'll invite you to respond in the chat. What challenges have you encountered? So Terry, thank you for starting us off. Where to find a pillow to scream into. Unfortunately, our presentation will not address this, but I think there are Bed Bath & Beyonds maybe still in Ontario. Fear, focusing on plagiarism, not integration and critical thinking, a tendency to overestimate the capabilities of generative AI. Absolutely. Resistance, balancing values and ethics with responsibility. Never sure where and when I can use AI effectively, but also staying within policy parameters. So sort of those tensions between our individual uses and our institutional expectations. Various readiness and acceptance levels. Teachers are frustrated with its usage. Stubborn laggards, refusing to even acknowledge AI's existence. It's fascinating how we're sort of seeing folks on all ends of the spectrum here. So the people who are adopting it undiscerningly and the people who are refusing to even engage with it. Absolutely. So if you do have other thoughts on this, please continue. But I imagine that our challenges at Western are not vastly different than a lot of challenges that people are experiencing at other institutions. The potential impact of generative AI broadly and of artificial intelligence broadly and generative AI specifically on both higher education, teaching and learning practices and knowledge production in general is really complex. There is so much uncertainty around what it can and can't do, as you've sort of shared in the chat, around what we should and shouldn't do with it. And there's a lot of conflation between different understandings of what AI even is, how it's being used, and often treating a specific tool, for example, ChatGPT, as synonymous with the entire field and the entire range of opportunities with AI. Reflecting this complexity, the second challenge that we've identified is information overwhelm. There's a huge amount of information about generative AI and different aspects of it. I don't know about folks here, but my social media feeds are just flooded with people who are yay AI, people who are nay AI, and it just doesn't seem to end. Half of my job just seems like it's keeping on top of the generative AI conversation, and I can barely keep up. And on top of the vast amount of information, it can be really overwhelming to try and distinguish the hype media, both negative and positive, from credible and useful information. So in and of itself, just keeping up with the rhetoric around this is a full-time job. The third issue, which I think was also reflected in some of your responses in the chat, is values friction. So all of this media and the AI conversation in general is laden with both doomsday scenarios and techno-optimistic narratives about how AI is going to solve all of humanity's woes. And I strongly feel that this reflects the plurality of human values, which I'm not sure is talked about enough in the generative AI space. Because often these values can come into conflict with each other. So when we talk about a human-centered approach to AI, that assumes there is a single humanness to the conversation, and I think it's much more complex than that. And in our programming and in our conversations, I would argue that most of the disagreements, most of the tensions about the nature, the potential, and the harm of AI are rooted in this values friction. People who simply care about different things and see things differently. And on top of all of this, if it wasn't enough already, on top of the overwhelming amount of helpful and rubbish information around generative AI, on top of the complexity, on top of the competing values and motivations, AI development and adoption is not staying still. The capabilities of the systems are evolving rapidly. They're being packaged in new ways, like agentic browsers, or simply embedded in systems that we already use. From day to day, what we know and what we believe is capable, AI is capable of, is changing, and this makes leading these conversations even more challenging. So the way that we've tried to approach this is through a project called the Generative AI Challenge. And I'm not going to claim that this approach solves all of these problems. We haven't solved the Gen AI problem. But this initiative is a way that we've sort of tried to at least address complexity, information overwhelm, values friction, and emergence on a small scale. What this is a series of posts that are all authored by different members of the Western community that help ease folks into the generative AI conversation. And the goal of the project really was to address some of these challenges head on. First, every post is authored by a different person. By having diverse authors from different institutional roles and disciplines, we touch upon the wide spectrum of complexity and topics, allowing people to sort of get a feel for all of the different parts of the conversation without overwhelming them with vast amounts of information. It's structured to help distill all of this information by organizing information into short posts that are written for a general audience. And I will talk about this challenge later, but as much as we've been able to work with contributors to use simple non-academic language and sent out on a regular schedule. I will also talk about recruitment in more detail later on, but I've been very deliberate about ensuring that contributors represent various ethical and value stances on generative AI adoption and use, because we wanted to make sure that the challenge didn't favor any one perspective or lens, or to be seen to try and change people's minds or push them towards either adoption or resistance. And finally, we have tried to embrace emergence through dynamic development of the challenge. Contributors can change their topics up until 2 weeks before their post date, and they do represent a wide range of roles in the institution, allowing us to recognize new forms of expertise, because I would say that there is not really one type of expert on the topic of generative AI.
So as Dani mentioned, the challenges and conversations we were having led us to the development of the Gen AI Challenge, which is a series of weekly posts that seeks to unpack that complexity of generative AI in higher ed by offering a deep dive into one of these complex topics at a time. So the way the posts are structured, it's through guided exploration. So we start off by providing readers with a bit of a lay of the land or background or context into the topic. Then it ushers them towards an asynchronous activity that they would complete independently. So each Monday for a series of 8 weeks, a new post would go live on our website. The post would also get emailed to Gen AI Challenge subscribers. So the first 2 screenshots you see on slide showcase our assessment and AI post. And the last screenshot on slide is what the web post looks like in a emailed format. And I will just I'll pop the link in the chat here if you're curious to see that article. We did draw inspiration from other initiatives that took this approach of like these weekly guided activities to explore AI in more detail. And one example is the University of Arts London 12 Days of AI. And I will drop the link there in the chat as well if you're curious to check that out. Our summer Gen AI challenge topics were AI awareness, bias and stereotypes, foundations of AI, falling for AI, AI and assessment, Gen AI and the act of creation, the information ecosystem, and AI and disinformation. The post topics were chosen by the challenge post authors. And these were brilliant individuals across our campus community who we've affectionately named our challengers. So our challengers were Western faculty, librarians, staff, and students. So like Dani mentioned, part of navigating the emergence of the topic means recognizing that expertise in this area is distributed. There's so many unique perspectives and lenses through which to view the topic. And it's kind of at these intersections where this disciplinary knowledge, lived experience, and creative problem solving meet. And that's the space where the most innovative ideas emerge. So the example on slide here, and I truly loved each and every post in the challenge, and I'd like to share one of my favorites. There's a QR code on slide if you're curious to see this post in your web browser. This post was on Gen AI and the act of creation, and it was written by our challenger, Stephen Sprong, who is Western's copyright officer and a member of Western Library's teaching and learning team. In this post, Stephen kicks us off with a pop culture reference, The Simpsons' Blurst of Times, to frame Gen AI as clever but not quite creative. He then moves through the big worries that we've all heard before: data use, originality, cultural stagnation. Stephen warns that AI could turn creators into passive consumers and reinforce dominant ideologies. But he also reminds us that reproduction and originality have always coexisted, often thriving together. And in his quote that he used to wrap up the piece, reproductive mediums, creativity, and originality have coexisted and often flourished long before the days of somebody tracing somebody else's papyrus. We may now be part of a new future that we're uncomfortable with, but humanity has definitely been here before. The generative AI challenge reached far beyond our expectations. We had 432 individuals subscribe to the challenge. In the email sign-up form, we asked for their name and their institutional affiliation. And through that, we identified 142 unique affiliations. And these ranged from educational institutions like universities, colleges, polytechnics, to school boards, private sector groups, and encompassing other category where folks were like students, alumni, or they just put NA. So we took that information about affiliation and discovered that we had reached 7 different countries. I then asked Copilot to plot the unique affiliations on a map, and that's what you see in the background image here. Because folks could participate in the challenge through both email and on the web, we did track page views across the challenge posts. So we logged nearly 6,000 total page views over the summer challenge period. And because these are situated on our website, they also become static resources for our center. So what you see here on slide is the page views of the top 4 visited posts, with those little spikes you see happening most often on Mondays. And that first major spike you see in mid-May was because our challenge got picked up by Academica Group's top 10. And that feature drove a good deal of traffic to our challenge. The challenge was also featured in Western News. And that news feature was picked up by Academica Group's top 10 again. And finally, Dani and I dipped our toes into traditional media, and we were also interviewed by our local CTV News to chat about the challenge as well. The feedback to the challenge has been, generally speaking, very positive. Folks like the flexible format. Some commented on the challenge's inability to move them from a skeptical stance, which wasn't the goal. We embrace skepticism here. And there were lots of suggestions about future topics, both within our formal feedback and in conversations with others, which really has only given us more ideas of like what we can do with this challenge in the future. Oh, Dani, you're muted.
Thank you, Courtney. Somebody always has to do that. It's usually me. So This has been a little bit of an undertaking, particularly as we were getting started. We wanted to share some of the actual practical logistics of how we did this. Recruitment, as we mentioned before, was an exercise in finding diverse perspectives on generative AI. Cortney and I are actually really well situated to do this because we lead the generative AI programming for our center, including our generative AI community of practice. We often have people who make interesting comments in workshops that are either pro AI or negative AI. So often when that happens, I'll reach out to those folks afterwards and say, hey, you said this thing. Would you like to contribute to our challenge? And that's allowed us to have that, again, that diversity of perspective, that diversity of topics. The topics themselves, when we do send out these recruitment emails to folks, we might say, you talked about this, would you like to contribute to the challenge? But really, it's important to us that folks get to choose their own topic. And the nature of the project is the contributors retain a large amount of agency in this. So they might come back and say, I'd love to contribute, but I want to talk about this totally other thing. And we're like, that's fine. As long as you have something you want to talk about, that's great. And then promotion of the challenge. Cortney talked about a lot of the ways that it's been picked up in different media outlets. We've also promoted the challenge internally through our own mailing lists, within related workshops, through our community of practice. And then we've also been promoting it through social media, primarily LinkedIn, and places like this workshop. So trying to share it with the broader community. On the right here, you'll see a LinkedIn post that's one of our challengers from this term, promoting a graduate PhD student who's associated with our Rotman Institute of Philosophy, where there is a lot of generative AI work happening. The other piece of the logistics and the other thing where most of my heavy lifting has been in the project is the editorial cycle. So contributors are asked to submit their posts 2 weeks before their post date. I tend to read and provide feedback on these. My feedback is not really about challenging their ideas, but more focusing on clarity, asking folks to provide sources and details, or asking them questions about the implications of certain statements that they've made so they can kind of dive deeper into it. Once I send back their feedback, they'll make any revisions. All revisions are optional. I think there's been very few cases where I've said you have to change this, and usually those are unsubstantiated statements. And then again, because of contributor agency, really it's their choice on how to respond. The biggest challenges in this cycle are first knowledge translation. We are working in academic communities. People like their very powerful academic language. So I spend a lot of time saying, how do we make this simple English, plain English? Can you explain these concepts or say who this person is? And the other thing that's been a big challenge is avoiding unsubstantiated grandiose claims against or in favor of AI. So sometimes we do have challengers who just will say a blanket statement of, this will destroy the world. And I say, give me evidence, give me proof. So it's just kind of helping them really link these two citations to evidence to something beyond just that emotional reaction. Overall, the challenge model has been a really great way of not addressing fully, but of at least approaching ways of ameliorating some of those challenges we had shared at the beginning. So complexity, the information overwhelm, the values friction, and this kind of constant emergence and change. Doing this by sharing a breadth of information in an easy to digest manner. So making sure we do have that diversity of perspective, that diversity of values, those diverse ethics. Highlighting these different perspectives on generative AI, and again, not trying to make the challenge sway anyone in one direction or the other. And then really importantly, rethinking expertise by highlighting different voices. Our contributors are students, undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty, staff, librarians, archivists, sort of people across the spectrum of places where generative AI will have an impact. On the screen here, if you'd like to join the challenge, I think we have 3 more posts in the fall, and then there will be a whole new series in the winter. There is a QR code. There's also a tiny URL, which is tinyurl.com/GenAI challenge. We hope that you'll join us because there are very interesting conversations happening in the challenge. And I will stop sharing my screen and we'll open it up for questions. And I think folks have been encouraged to use the Q&A tool for questions.
Oh, they're coming in right now.
So I see Hannah's asked a question. I know you spoke to this a bit, but just wanted to learn a bit more. Are there any topics you didn't want to include, like AI detection? I wouldn't say there haven't been any topics that we didn't want to include. In conversations with people about topics, it was more just about making sure they did have something to back up their stance on the topic. So if somebody wanted to talk about AI detection, either in favor or against it, they would just need to provide evidence saying, yes, this is a viable way of detecting AI-generated content, or no, it's not. And that's where people would maybe not be able to pursue a topic because they didn't have that information to back up what they were saying.
I'll also add too, because this is an initiative out of our Center for Teaching and Learning. Any topic that was presented did need to have some impact on teaching and learning broadly. So though there is kind of interest on how Gen AI has been impacting, let's say, the research space, as long as we can frame that conversation, aspects of that conversation as it impacts teaching and learning, then we were kind of willing to proceed with it.
The next question just asks, will you be able to see previous challenges if you sign up now? They won't come to you through the mailing list, but I've just put a link in the chat that should take you to all of the previous challenge posts. And they're all tagged, they're organized in reverse chronological order, so you'll see the most recent challenge at the top. Kate asks, what prompted you to call it a challenge and not a discussion? Each of the posts actually does have like a challenge or an activity where we ask people to take an action or to do something to kind of dive deeper into the topic. And then on top of that, because we are trying to provide like a breadth of perspectives and ideas, the underlying ethos is sort of challenging your beliefs to kind of go beyond maybe your echo chambers or your narrow views of AI. Again, not to persuade you either to adopt or resist, but just to kind of think beyond what you've already decided. And Elizabeth asks, how has or will your work impact policy at UWO and TNL? I will defer to Cortney for that one.
I'm happy to take that one. So at Western, the posts have definitely helped add to the conversations that we're having. So for those of you who might not be familiar with how Western has approached Gen AI, we're very much values a values aligned. We take a very values aligned approach to Gen AI. So what that means is we don't have policy governing how Gen AI is used. Rather, our existing policies would cover kind of the applications of it. But ultimately, it depends on you, your perspective, your pedagogical values, let's say within the context of teaching and learning, and how would Gen AI use then align with that. So what this does, what the challenge has done, is help kind of elucidate those kind of domains of AI use, or the domains of AI kind of awareness, let's say, which we do have an ebook on, but it just helps folks kind of figure out how they can better align their Gen AI use to their own values. So it just provides space to kind of reflect upon that and help guide them in their own decision making. I hope that answers your question. And I do see that there's another conversation, or there's another question in the chat about what's one takeaway from the challenge that perhaps has helped form Western direction in the field of Gen AI in education. It's very much that we're acknowledging the complexity, and that it's just another resource from which you can draw your from which you can base your decisions off of.
I'd also like to respond to Terry's comment where they write, I challenge you to post a challenge or post written completely by AI and see if anyone notices. I did have somebody drop out quite last minute in this last series, and that was my backup plan, Terry. And then the challenge underneath would be, this was written by AI. How do you feel about it? But I did manage to find a last minute substitute for it. That you've sort of blown up my thing, because that might happen in the winter if I have somebody else drop out, but pay attention and we'll see. think we might be coming up to the end of our time, but we may have time for one more question. I don't see any more coming in. Well, thank you all for being an attentive audience and joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed your presentation. Next up, we have Andre, Adesh, and Susie, who will be sharing with us the Ontario Businesses and Academic Institutions, Lambton College Advising You Partnership with OSIP Innovation Story.
Thank you so much. So now, shifting the gears a little, I'm excited to introduce our wonderful presenters who will share how we're bridging Ontario's businesses and academic institutions through the Ontario Collaborative Innovation Platform that are known as OSIP. First, we'll hear from Advising You, an innovative ed tech business, as they walk us through their journey and how they leverage OSIP to tackle a business-focused challenge. Then we'll pass the microphone over to Adesh, an expert at Lambton College, who'll share their approach to addressing that challenge from an academic perspective. So let's dive in and hear their stories, and I'll share my screen.
Thanks,
Over to you,
Susie.
Andre.
I just you can hear me, just double checking before I begin?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay,
perfectly fine.
perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andre DeFreitas. I'm the founder of Advising You. I'm also a first generation student who's taking a different approach to solving big education problems. And starting off with this presentation today, we all know that change typically within our sector takes, years, sometimes even decades, for things to change. And, with AI, there is an opportunity and for us to change quite quickly. And so I'm using that lens in terms of my knowledge of AI as my hobby and what I do, after work hours in terms of my research to apply AI to solving some of the big problems that we're facing today. And so, rather than waiting for change to happen in 10 years or more, I'm focused on transforming how we can fund and support students now with digital solutions that, sort of rethink outdated models. And OSIP, made that possible for me as a solopreneur to bring my vision and specifically this vision forward, proving that innovation isn't just about tech, but changing an entire system to better serve students and institutions. Excuse me. And on this slide here, it highlights the structured framework that OSIP provides. My approach was always about delivering real solutions that fit within existing systems, but also help them evolve quickly. By reimagining government funding models and strategic mandate agreements through smart digital transformation and with guidance from mentors, I was able to develop a product that improves services for today and not someday far down the line. And, again, OSIP helped me structure that path. And on the next slide, you'll see that it's provided access here to a wider ecosystem of funding, research, and innovation networks. And my project builds connections to these parts of the system to address the $3 billion aggregated deficit plaguing our sector at the moment. I believe in solutions-driven innovation, which, creating systems that generate revenue for institutions and the province while future-proofing education. And being able to be plugged into these networks by presenting to, the executive teams at COU, at the ministry, and, and HECO, it was vital for me to get feedback to ground my vision to ensure that it is somewhat reality and that it could be accessed and proven to be continued to be built. And then, on the human side of OSIP, this slide really focuses on the community that OSIP creates. And so again, for a solo innovator like me, it's about more than products. It's about bridging real solutions to problems we see every day, such as, the redundant processes, the fragmented systems that hurt students and institutions. And my goal simply has been to use, AI and digital transformation as that tool to simplify and humanize the student journey, making education better for today, again, rather than waiting, the years for slow systemic change. And so with that, Student Link is one of those solutions. It's designed not just to support students better, but to tackle ingrained inefficiencies um, and funding challenges facing the entire post-secondary system. And the outcomes of the efficiencies audit and the varying audit general audit report outcomes. And the partnership model OSIP uses helped me validate that a solopreneur can lead a project that generates the type of revenue that's needed and the cost savings that's needed to, respond to our sector deficit, which I believe is an essential step in future-proofing, our system. And the next slide, really introduces Student Link, and it shows how, the platform supports students starting all the way from their OEN, from their OEN all the way through post-secondary. It's built on an idea that, we don't need dozens of disconnected CRMs or student information systems, slowed by outdated processes. And nor to, really to be visionary, I don't believe that we need to rely as much on traditional registrar offices in some student services anymore, as we can provide service around the clock, both with human and AI support. AI and automation are already transforming these roles, and to be quite frank and clear, they've already transformed these roles globally. It's just not in our sector yet. And so, Student Link aims to be at the forefront of this transformation, streamlining everything to improve the student experience and their academic journey by ensuring that service is available 24/7 on demand. And here's why digital transformation really shines. Student Link's AI-driven insights and automation eliminates the need for redundant systems and the processes that I previously spoke about. And, it frees most of our institutions from using varying CRMs on an annual basis, saving hundreds of millions of dollars annually. This is about modernizing back office operations gently but decisively while improving, student support, credit transfers, admissions, recruitment, financial aid, and accessibility services seamlessly. It's a smarter revenue generating approach designed for the reality of today and for the future. And the measurable impact on this slide reflects that strategic approach, which is also evidence-based. So next slide, Susie. There's about $655 million in sector savings through efficiency gains and automations. And these improvements don't just have money, or just don't save money. They improve the student experience by redirecting resources where they needed the most. And my work with OSIP and ADESH is about turning that $3 billion problem into an opportunity for growth, revenue, and sustainability across our province. And it's shown through the research that it would take approximately just about 2 years after implementation to start generating revenue for our province and our institutions. And the roadmap here, outlines a forward-looking plan grounded in today's realities. It's a solution-driven innovator. I'm focused on partnerships, seeking government funding, and pilot testing at scale for a system that's designed to save money, again, improve outcomes, and yet keep advancing, with AI-powered technology that removes barriers and redundancies that continue to further impact our sector deficits and jobs. And so, I'm hoping that this will help in paving a way for a more agile and future-ready education system in Ontario. And so in closing, this slide reminds us of the bold potential ahead. And with OSIP support, I'm helping reshape education funding and operations using AI and digital transformation. And this isn't about waiting, for me, at least, it's not about waiting a decade for change to happen. It's about making post-secondary education smarter, more efficient, and more student-centered when it's needed. And that's right now. And it's about building sustainable solutions that generate real revenue for institutions and the province while preparing our system for whatever comes next. And with that, I'll hand it over to Adesh.
Thank you, Andre. All right. Good morning, everybody. As Susie and Andre, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this presentation. I'm going to talk about my journey with Advising You Innovation Challenge and OSIP. So next slide, Susie. So before we go into nitty-gritty details, I want to ask you, as a sports fanatic guy, are we excited for tomorrow's game for Blue Jays? I hope we win this game because this would be a fantastic 32 years after 32 years. So let's go Blue Jays. So Coming back to the topic, I am Adesh Shah. I am the manager for the Digital Transformation Lab funded by the Natural Science Engineering Research Council of Canada and Artificial Intelligence for Advanced Manufacturing, which is one of the 10 development site funded by the Ontario Centre of Innovation at Lambton College. These two research centers help small and medium-sized enterprises leverage big data technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, software design development to expand their businesses. And in addition to DTL, we have 7 specialized research centers. Um, just one second. Each research center bring their unique skills and expertise and research infrastructures. To throw some numbers at you, in 24-25 alone, Lambton College collaborated with 381 industry partners, worked on 381 projects, brought in $12 million in research funding, hired 186 researchers, and provided hands-on opportunities to student researchers, that is 200 student researchers. And this speaks volume. And because of that, we are currently ranked in number 2 in the applied college sector in Canada. And we have hold that position in top 5 for the last 9 consecutive years. But today I would like to talk about my approach to this innovation challenge. And what exactly happened is once I received the innovation challenge by the OSIP, I analyzed that innovation challenge. I took my experience from artificial intelligence, technology, and project management to deeply understand what the industry partner was looking for. Once I have analyzed the whole challenge, then I went on a call with Andre and I understood what Andre really wanted to develop, what Andre's end goal was. And once I had all the information outlined, then it was just plug and play on the structure that OSIP provided. OSIP had a fantastic framework with overall estimates, deliverables, main activities, expertise required, and equipment. And that really helped me build a comprehensive scope for Andre. And then I delivered my results to OSIP and Andre. And today we are here presenting you the success story that we had. So, what was included in the scope of work report? Now, the innovation challenge is provided by the businesses, and the scope of work report is provided by the expert, which is academia. Now, in this scope of record, I included 5 main things, which is deliverables, main activities, expertise required, equipment required, and overall estimates. So we'll start with the deliverables first. Now, given that this project was a software design development as well as the AI, so I started with, okay, what are the different phases that this project has? Number one is the API to hold all that data in the backend. And once that data is there in the backend, then we need to have a front end. So we developed the front end. Now, as Andre mentioned, all this information is student related, and AI, as we all know, hallucinates quite a bit of time. So what we decided is let's go with a AI architecture, which is a retrieval augmented generation to reduce the hallucination and anonymize all the student data. So there's always a tight, ethical, and responsible AI usage. And then there was the expertise required. What are the expertise that we will require in order to develop this platform? So there were software engineers, UI UX designer, AI developer, a project management, just to make sure everything is aligned properly. For the equipment, I decided to go with a Microsoft Azure platform. As we all know, Azure is a very strong data secure platform, sometimes can be expensive, but also at the same time it delivers. And then I wrap it up all with my overall estimates on how much it will cost to develop something like this. Now, how was my experience with OSIP? So OSIP Innovation Challenge really matched the algorithm, the OSIP algorithm matched Andre and myself as an academia institute to help the small and medium-sized enterprises. I'll be honest with you. I was very curious to know about the algorithm because as an AI expert, I've been AI field for the last 10 years. I was like, how did they develop this algorithm? What are the parameters? So that was a side project and something I would ask Susie afterwards. So they have a very seamless matchmaking, the collaborative engagement, the folks from OSIP, the industry partner and academia, everybody work collaboratively to help businesses and help academia succeed. And thanks to OSIP for that. And the OSIP user-friendly platform. I had as a software engineer, I enjoyed the user friendliness and user experience, and OSIP really had a good user experience platform where everything was mentioned clearly and everything worked seamlessly. And that was a great user experience, perhaps for me as well as for the industry partner to see their scope of work report. So I will end with some of the impact and key takeaways. So number one is clear expectations. At Lambton College, I have worked with a lot of industry partners. Sometimes industry partners underestimate what is actually required. This OSIP challenge and scope of work report really helps them identify what are the key technical challenges, what are the issues, how much it will cost, and what is required in order to develop this. And thus it sets a clear expectation for industry partner, in this case, Andre, on what is expected out of the way. Funding pathways. A lot of industry partners I have interacted with are not aware about the funding opportunities like NSERC, MyTax, OCI, OSIP. And it is very important for a lot of industry partner to tap into this funding pathway so that they can be successful. I'm an immigrant. I know Canada. I learned very early on that Canada is a home of startups and entrepreneurs, and we need to support them. And strategic foundation. OSIP Innovation Challenge provide industry partners with a crucial insight on the project scope. As I mentioned in my scope of work report, this really provided Andre with clear expectation on what exactly is required in order to develop this product. And with that, I would end the slide with a quote, and I would like to be a little philosophical. So I've written on a keyboard not that far away. So if you're looking for a collaboration, just send an email. The earlier you send us an email, we'll be happy to help you academia-wise. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Adesh, and thank you so much, Andre. To wrap it up, we're taking a look at a business demand-driven matching. And so the algorithm that Adash has talked about, we identified that Lambton College would be the ideal research partner to address EdVisingU's innovation challenge by taking a look at EdVisingU, the business itself, as well as the challenge itself, and what sort of information and support that they kind of require. And also our algorithm takes a look at, the specific sector codes and experiences and the keywords that are used throughout the business profile, the challenge profile, as well as the specific academic institution's facility profile as well. So that we can certainly have a deeper conversation about our algorithm in a different call. But taking the Lambton College as the best expert to address business's challenge, it moved on to do a collaboration with the academic institution. So Lambton College provided a detailed scope of work that Adash has walked you through that helped EdVisingU to shape a project plan to tackle the challenge effectively, and also looking at the feasibility and the validation of the challenge itself. From there, they're currently doing a full-scale project where the partnership has evolved into a collaborative project involving both teams, with students gaining that direct industry experience through the active participation. And this specific student involvement in the collaborative project ties in really nicely with our new service at eCampus Ontario, where we're supporting the work integrated learning opportunities. So through our partnership with ICTC, eCampus Ontario is helping small medium enterprises to grow their business by providing wage subsidies to hire students for meaningful work integrated learning opportunities, where employers can receive up to 50%, so maximum of $5,000 of wage subsidy, or up to 70% if they're hiring a post-secondary student with an underrepresented group. As well, the program that EdVisingU that has participated, OSIP, it made it possible for them to receive a scope of work report from Adesh through our innovation voucher program that we're currently actively running, where businesses that would meet the eligibility of the program would be able to receive a free scope of work report from expert through the voucher program, while we're making sure that the experts' time are being paid for to put together the report. So, if you are a business or know a business that may be interested, as well as if you're a researcher or part of an academic institution that are interested in learning more about OSIP, our WILL program, or other eCampus Ontario programs and services, please reach out to me directly to my email, and I'll be happy to discuss everything under the umbrella of our programs that we offer at eCampus Ontario. And then last but not least, join us at the Key on November 11th and 12th for 2 days full of education, insights, workshops, and coming together to reinvent education for a resilient future. And join us right here with the same link at 12 o'clock noon for Anne-Marie Scott, the keynote of today, who will be speaking on rediscovering open education for a resilient future. Thank you so much, and I'll end the presentation here.